I'm going to show you now is a typical fault that we can set on the system and how to perform the diagnostics for it. So we're going to do a installation fault. So we'll get the system, say driving along, and we can switch the fault. So you can switch the faults at any time. It's the one right in the middle here, INS installation. We can see now on the screen that it's come up with a high voltage fault within the system, and the ready light is gone. So we can connect up the scan tool or press on the OBD here, and we can see here that we've got a high voltage leak to ground at MG2. Okay, so MG2 is looking at this section up here. So in order to do an installation test, we need to shut down the system first. So we're going to do the shutdown and show how to do the installation test. What I've got right here is the Fluke 1577. Doesn't matter, you can use any installation meter that you've got. We're also going to need some of the components such as a safety lockout box. Now, you don't need to use the safety lockout box, this is just what we use as best practice. We've also got some of the gloves. Now, this is also part of the training that's involved with the LabSoft course that you get. Students will need to test the gloves and make sure that the gloves are of the correct class. So testing the gloves, first of all, to make sure that they're airtight. So doing this, making sure that you don't feel any air coming out, no pinpricks, but also making sure that the gloves have the correct date on them as well. They're within date. If you use leather gloves, then you can also have the leather gloves on top. So that's all of the tools that you'll need to do the shutdown. Now, performing the shutdown, we need to remove the ignition key. Now, what we do that on a real vehicle, if you've got a smart key, so one of the remote keys, that needs to be taken away, put further away from the vehicle. So 4 meters, 16 feet sort of thing, but we can also put that in there. If you're doing this and you're teaching the students, which is part of what we're trying to do, we're trying to prepare them for when they go work on the real vehicle, they need to go along in a real vehicle, press the start button. If there is a start button in the vehicle, because sometimes there's a smart key is hidden within the car in the glove box or in the center console. So it's good practice to do that as well. The second thing that we need to do is we need to remove the battery, or disconnect the battery in the very least. So we've got this little cable down here, so we can just remove that cable and put that aside. That's then shutting down the 12-volt system. So we've come along and we've tested both of our gloves now, make sure that they're fine, tested, so I'm happy to use those. We've also got our multimeter. So we're going to use the multimeter to verify that the system is shut down. Okay, so we've got the service plug here. So at this point we need to use our gloves, and we're going to remove the service plug, and I'm going to put the service plug in here. So this is very important to make sure that no one else can accidentally get the vehicle running again. Everything that's required to get this vehicle started is now inside that box, and I'm the only person with the key for that box. So I can put that inside my key. It's my life, it's my responsibility. Second thing that we've got here now is we can remove the inspection point. Now, almost every vehicle has a different inspection point. Toyota often have it underneath the inverter. Sometimes it's near the battery. But you'll see there's 2 points here for doing that, for measuring. Now, what I need to do here is I've got my measurement device. The other thing about the measurement device is you need to make sure it's category 3 rated to 1000 volts. That also applies to the leads that you've got as well. So So the first thing I want to do is make sure that the system is actually working, the multimeter is actually working. So I want to go over to the 12 volt battery here because I need to make sure that it's actually working at 12, that it's measuring DC voltage. So you can see here that the system is showing 12 volts. This is part of the live dead live that we need to do, live dead live test. So that's the first live, testing the battery. Now I'm going to come here to the dead part, which is measuring the inspection point, and we can see here we've got under 1 volt. So the system is shut down. Now, to make sure that we haven't got a false negative, I'm going to go back to the 12 volt battery and measure that again. And I can see I'm just confirming that my multimeter is actually working still. So now I've confirmed there's 0 volts here. I can actually now remove the gloves. If we're working on any part of the vehicle outside of the high voltage battery, we're now 100% sure that the system has 0 volts in it. So now I want to do an insulation test. So I can use the same meter to do the insulation test. What I need to do there though is swap the leads around. And I can do various tests on the unit there. Also need to switch that around. We can do it on 500 or 1000 volts. What I'll just do first, to show, just in case you don't know what an insulation tester is I'm going to do it in ohms first. So, put the unit there. Now these points here are our ground points. There's various ground points, like on a real vehicle, there's what's called potential equalization points within the vehicle. So from the inverter, from the compressor to ground, to make sure that if there's any problems, there's no chance of electrocution. But what I'm doing here is I'm going from ground now to the various phases of the motor generator. So now, of course, if you're doing this in a real vehicle, you've got to remove the components, remove the cables in order to test this. This is just about learning how to use the test equipment. So you can see it's set to ohms. If I go through the various phases, we're not seeing a problem there. So we need to use what's called an ohm meter, mega ohm meter, in order to actually break through the insulation resistance. So if I go there now and I press the insulation test, you can see there 660 mega ohms. And you can see on this phase here, we've actually got only half a meg insulation resistance. So that, on this section here, is where the phase is actually shorted through to ground. Okay, so once we've identified that, we found that that's where the problem is, we can then say to the student, okay, great. We can then disconnect that fault switch, and the student would then go through and put the system back into operation. So because we've verified that the system has 0 volts, we don't have to use our gloves at this point here. Go to our safety lockout box. Because we're dealing with the service plug, we need to use our gloves again here. Put the gloves on. Reconnect our battery. Don't need the gloves anymore. Now we can test the system, go back into the scan tool, reset the fault code, and test the unit. Make sure that everything's fine. And so that's how to perform installation, test, and shutdown of the Cartrain system.